Hey guys, it's Yishan here, coming at you guys with my Grand Maju Stun video that I know a lot of people are interested in. I know a lot of people play Stun, and so I wanted to make a video about Grand Maju Stun. Not only am I going to put my current deck list in the video, my current deck profile, and explain it, I also want to talk about all the other options that you have available playing Grand Maju Stun. And I know a lot of people have been playing different cards, and I want to talk about those. And cards like those are like Fossil Dyna. Some people play some equip spells, D-shifters in the main or in the side, Eater of Millions. How many should you play? Pot of Duality, Card of Demise, Dark Bribe. The list is quite expansive, and I want to talk about all those options that players have. So let's get straight into the video. Okay, so let's go through my deck list first, then I'll talk about other options. But first I want to explain sort of how I ended up on this deck list. Okay, so first of all, Eater of Millions. Okay, so Eater of Millions, I'm only playing one Eater of Millions. Now, Eater of Millions is like a weird card in the stun deck, whereas in the OTK decks, you can draw multiples of it, and it's great because it attacks when it comes down because you're planning on going second. I think that Eater of Millions is actually pretty good in the stun deck as well, because it's like an extra threat, and sometimes all this deck needs, because you're playing a lot of traps, and you've been able to stop your opponent, you just need one or two threats to really pound your opponent and close out those games. I found that since you don't want to draw two, I figure why not play one? I found that without Eater, my deck was a little threat light, and I preferred to have this one Eater in there. I put it in there every time I've seen it. I've been happy with it, and so I think one Eater is actually a pretty good number. I could see playing two, but I just not really have the space in this deck, so I figured let's just put in an Eater. Worked out well. Okay, let's talk about the next card, Gizmek. Now I see a lot of stun decks playing two Gizmek, and in some stun decks that may be correct. However, in how I think this deck should be played, you should be playing three Gizmek. You should always be playing three Gizmek in this style of deck, especially in my build, because when you're playing a trap deck like this, you just want one recursive threat. Like I said, you need a recursive threat. You need a threat because setting 5 is like okay, but setting 4 with having a threat is much, 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 much better because you're putting pressure on your opponent. And Gizmek, I think, not only does that help you have a recursive threat, but it helps you steal game because it lets you bring out your Grand Maju. The only time this card could be maybe considered bad is if you draw two of them, but I think it's definitely worth to play three. It's just so good. And we're not playing Fossil Dyna in this deck, as you can see, which makes this card even better. So if you're not playing Fossil Dyna, you should be maxing out on this card. If you're playing Fossil Dyna, I still think you should max out on this card because you can special this first and then play Fossil Dyna. But yeah, so that's I think you should play three. Three Grand Maju actually works surprisingly well with stun. You get a lot of free wins from this card, which is sort of what Grand Maju's purpose is. It's like a free win, a panic button in the stun deck. It works actually really well, surprisingly well. I've played stun multiple times, and every time I play this deck, I'm always surprised at how well Grand Maju actually fits into this strategy. Okay, 3 Inspector Boarder. I think most people would agree on me, this is the best stun card in the Grand Maju stun deck. Basically the only other close option is Fossil Dyna, and then maybe there's some arguments to be made for Banisher the Radiance and Thunder King and whatever, but Inspector Boarder is basically the best. What I love about a Boarder, it has high attack points. It doesn't need to be protected from battle. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of Fossil Dyna. We'll get there later. But yeah, so I think most people would agree Inspector Boarder is probably staple 3 of in Grand Maju Stun. Now this last card I'm playing, you see I'm playing a low monster count deck. And in fact, a lot of times, even if you open Gizmek and 4 traps, you can still keep the Gamma in your hand, or Gizmek and 3 traps in this case if you were going first. Because you don't have to play the Gizmek on your turn. I actually think when you're playing less monsters, but more recursive threats or more ways to play on your opponent's turn, Gamma becomes a really, really, really fantastic card. I think it actually works really, really well in the stun version, and that's why I've sort of shied away from playing Dyna and all these other stuff, because I actually think Gamma is incredibly powerful in this style of deck, because not only does it help you go first, it helps you go second. I love those kinds of cards. It can be a dead draw later into the game, but if you get it resolved on your turn, you're like almost certainly winning the game, which I think is fantastic. So I think definitely Cyframe Gamma in this style of deck, I think if you're not playing it in your stun decks, you should definitely give it a shot because it actually works surprisingly well because it protects your extravagances. If you get lucky and you desires and you don't banish it, it protects your desires. It protects a lot of things and also gives you lots of play going second. So I really, really like it. Okay, 3 Pot of Desires, pretty standard. The reason why I run extra threats a lot of times is because of desires. You're on like a clock and you really just need to draw a threat to win because you're running out of cards. cards, so I think that's why sometimes the extra eater works well. Duality. I've seen a lot of people play 2, which is fine. I've seen some people cut it. I actually don't think that's good, because the only thing you're special summoning in this deck is Gizmek and Eater, and if you're going first, you don't want to special summon Eater anyway, so Duality is fine, and you can just summon Gizmek on your opponent's turn, so I don't really see, like, Duality is like a might as well play it sort of thing. It can conflict sometimes later in the game, but honestly, like, it's pretty good, and, you know, I think it's better than any other 2 cards I could fill up this deck with. 3 Extravagance, just totally broken in this deck. You do run short on extra space, which is why sometimes we play less Eaters as well, so we're sort of swapping out Eaters for Extravagances in this style deck. And I want to talk about some traps here. I have not seen people playing these 6 trap cards. 3 Dogmatica, or these 2. 3 Dogmatica Punishment, 3 Ice Dragon's Prison. I haven't seen many stun players playing these cards. I don't even know why. I think Dogmatica Punishment is like a common, so it's really cheap. You don't even need to worry about budget concerns. Well, these extra deck targets do cost money, but like, this card is just so powerful as a trap card. And as a stun deck, a lot of times you feel like, I'm just going to lose going second. Well, actually not in this deck, because we're running 3 Imperm and 3 Gamma, but you also want your traps you want some of your traps at least to be both good going first and second. I think that's really important, and sometimes people overlook that because they're like, well, you know, I'm just gonna hope I win the die roll. Well, actually, the best decks can do really well best stun decks can do really well going first, but still have a pretty good fighting chance going second. And I think that these cards really allow you to play second, but also play first really well. Right now, the meta is like, you know, Rocket, Dragon, Link, Dinosaur. This Ice Dragon's Prison card is extremely good. Dogmatica Punishment just works well because we're not really utilizing our extra deck very much. And it's like just 2-for-1s. You can put like the Wind Pegasus in your graveyard if you only need to pop 1 monster to give you some extra back removal. It allows you to play these extra monsters. So if you do go up against Dogmatica and they activate like Max, you can just send some stuff. I did that earlier today. I think really powerful. I think almost all stun players should be looking into playing at least Dogmatica Punishment because that card's a common, but it's also really good, and some other Ice Dragon's Prison. We don't really use the extra deck, so you know this card is no drawback for us. Yeah, I've seen some people play Crackdown, which is a great card if you are another great trap card. That's also pretty decent going second, but these cards just seem better. And to be honest, if you're not playing links in your extra, I don't like Crackdown because it sort of just does nothing. Like, okay, it takes their monster, but like you can't do anything with it. You can't link off with it. And so I think actually these trap cards are much more powerful than people are giving them credit for in the Grand Module community. I think they should be played. 3 Imperm, just like the reason it's like a hand trap that you can play with Border. That's why you sort of play it in this deck. It's weak in terms of like how powerful traps should be, but it's a hand trap, and it also works even if you draw Border. So that's why like if you don't use it and you draw it with Border, it's still pretty good. And now you might say, well, Ishan, like Border stops all monster effects. Well, actually, it turns out a lot of times that your opponent's able to activate 1 monster effect, and if you can just stop that monster effect while also forcing them to be able to not activate any more, that's usually good enough, to be honest. And so, you know, your opponent a lot of times will be able to get like 1 link on the field, but an Imperm can stop them, so it's still useful with Border. 3 Judgment, I would say staple. 3 Strike, I would say staple. These are just the best traps by far. Now, the only iffy card in this deck is Solemn Warning. I said that with my Toad normal frog deck profile, which I'll link up there in a card. But basically, like, Solemn Warning is a really great card, but also can be really bad. You could try Compulse. I tried Compulse over Ice Dragon's Prison a while ago, but I think Ice Dragon's Prison is actually just a better card in this meta. And Solemn Warning, I mean, it's a really powerful card if you draw it going first. And if you can survive the first turn and still draw it, it's also really powerful. So I'm playing it right now. It's been working well. But that's it for the main deck. I want to go through the side deck really quickly. We're going to talk about Dimension Shifter. Now, why am I not playing Dimension Shifter in main? A lot of people would say, and I would agree with them, that Dimension Shifter is the best hand trap in the format right now. And I would be hard pressed to disagree with them. My problem with Dimension Shifter is that first of all, if you're going first, it's not the greatest card for you because you have so many pot cards you want to play, and you have to hold off a turn on playing them. You don't actually have to, because you can D-Shifter and then play Pot of Extravagance after, or you can D-Shifter and then play your pots, which is actually fine. But this deck also, so what I meant to say is that this deck sees like a lot of turns, right? Like turns usually last more than, you know, one or two turns, whereas the OTK style decks, they try to end games quick. And so either you have D-Shifter in your opening hand or you don't, and if you don't, then it's fine. You just, you didn't draw it, so it's not a big deal. And if you do, it's great. But I really just didn't want to, like, one of the problems with these stun decks is like sometimes you just draw cards and they just do nothing, and you really don't want to have that happen, in my opinion. And so that's why I think D-Shifter is better in the side, because you know you're going second. Okay, that's great. I mean, honestly, trap cards are almost better going first if you're going first. If you know you're going second, bring in those D-Shifters. Fantastic hand trap. That's why I have it in the side. I hope that made sense to you guys, basically, which is it can be too dead too often in the main deck, in my opinion. 1 Pankratops, great going second card. Harpy's Feather for the back row. 3 Super Poly. This is like, you could do different things here. Like if you want to try to play around, back row removal, you could play like Dark Bribe. You could play like the Waking the Dragon. Although the thing is, we're using our extra space for Dogmatika Punishment here, so that's not as tempting of an option. But I think still Super Poly is great. It's one of our few ways to get rid of those the Dragoon. So I think it's great in the side deck as well. Okay, 3 Twin Twister. You could play Lightning Storm if you wanted. You just need some back row. I do find that like there are a lot of times where you can there's like cards in your hand that you don't need in the stun decks, and so you can just ditch it with Twin Twister. It's good back row removal. There's like ways you can I'm thinking of playing like a Trap Trick sort of. Like you could play like Trap Trick, honestly, instead of Solemn Warning here for these cards. Although I do think that sometimes you can banish too much stuff, but I do think Trap Trick could be a legitimate option instead of Solemn Warning if you want to go that route. And you could try like Heavy Storm Duster in the side deck as well. So there's different routes to take this. I think Trap Trick is certainly a viable option. Very good card. Okay, we have 1 Imperial Order. I think this belongs in the side deck, to be honest, because it's really sucks going second. And not all decks are like super reliant on spells. Striker's not part of the meta as much anymore, but it's still like just a totally overpowered card when it's working. And then 3, there can be only 1. I see a lot of people main deck this, and I tried that for a while, but honestly, I just didn't like it in the main deck because, first of all, it's fine going second, but like, you're playing so many traps already that like, if you like draw TC Boo, like a lot of times you're like, well, should I just not use my traps? Do I just try to hold on to this TC Boo? And it works all right, but again, like sometimes if you're going first, sometimes just a Solemn Warning is just going to be better, honestly, in more matchups than TC Boo. But it's a really great side deck card, I think. It's one of those cards where like, okay, I'm just going to bring it in when I know for sure it's going to be good. I don't want any dead draws. And I think the consistency is where this deck really shines because it has a really straightforward game plan and it's always able to execute. Okay, so extra deck, I think Ents is the best target for Dogmatika Punishment. I think Wind Pegasus is the second best. And then I just don't think Fossil Warrior is as good as these other two, but, I play one of it just in case. Omega is also a fine target if there's something in the graveyard bothering you, but that way I can also run it for the Gamma first turn plays. And then we have 1 5-headed dragon because I'm a baller, and I figure, what if someone summons like the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno? I need to pop it, So yeah. Okay, let's talk about Super Poly targets. I just have one of these because it's nice to have, and then I think these are the most common ones. I could play 3 Starving Venom maybe, and maybe one of these other ones, but these are just, I think if you're going to side in Super Poly, these targets will usually be fine. You don't need to play the level 8, the Salamon Great Fusion, because we're not really rank 8ing, so then Earth Golem tends to be a better choice here because it hits more things. Okay, so that's it for my main deck. Now I want to talk about some other Grenmaju cards that are making their appearances in stun decks and sort of how I feel about them and what I think about them. So let's talk about Fossil Dyna first. Fossil Dyna, I actually think is a better stun card than Inspector Boarder, in my opinion. Now, I guess the question is like, why don't I play Fossil Dyna then? Well, the thing is, the biggest reason I don't play Fossil Dyna is because of its low attack. And it's just like it's so weak to so many things, and I think Fossil Dyna would actually be fine in this deck because right now, like if you're looking at the trap lineup, you have Punishment, which will probably kill stuff, and then you have your Warnings and your Judgments, right? But if you don't have your Warnings or your Judgments, or you're not playing a Warning, or you're not playing, you're probably playing Judgment, but then you have to Judgment like normal summons. So then like, what if they have Imperm? Then like you don't, there's like so many like things like, oh man, like you're just stretching your resources thin. It has low attack. So that's why I'm not playing right now. I actually think Fossil Dyna could be a really good side deck card. I actually think it has a place in Grenmaju Stun because against some decks like that just can't do anything, literally nothing about Fossil Dyna, that's like a great time to bring it in. But like if I'm looking at the top decks, dragging like any rocket monster, it threatens your Fossil Dyna. you know, how is it better than Inspector Border? That's what I'm asking myself. I'm looking at dinosaurs, you know, Oviraptor, boom, you know, that card just already threatens False Dynamo. And the most annoying thing is, like, you know, if you don't negate like Oviraptor, like if you only have Dogmatika punishment, the Oviraptor, they can search for another Oviraptor and keep trying to put pressure on your thing. So one answer players have had to try to protect their Fossil Dyna is to play equip spells like Moon Mirror Shields. Actually, I should be showing you these cards. So this is what, I mean, I think most of you guys know what Fossil Dyna does by this point. This is Fossil Dyna. It just stops your opponent from specialing and has this nice flip effect as well, which is relevant sometimes. And then the two equip spells I'm talking about are basically Moon Mirror Shield, and so this one basically lets you win any battle, and then there's also another one called Power of the Guardians. Power of the Guardians, which is like every time you attack, you gain 500 attack, and you put a counter on this card, and if something would be destroyed, you could just remove a counter, so it's fine. So I think like Power of the Guardians is like okay. These equip spells are okay, but a lot of times you can't get. You need both for them to be good. You don't really want to be putting these equip spells on like your Gren Modus or your Gizmex, and it's just like. It's a little inconsistent. It could just do nothing at certain times. And so that's why a lot of people are playing this trap card that lets you get the equip spells from your deck, which I think is fine. Like, I think it's a fine option, but like, it's just too inconsistent for my tastes. And I think Fossil Dyna is actually just not as good in Inspector Border, mainly because of its low attack. But I actually think it's a great card still. I think I could see play. I could see running it, but right now I think it's better. I could see running it in the side deck, especially. So that's my thing on Fossil Dyna. 3 Gizmek, that was my next notes here. Yeah, you should be playing 3 Gizmek. If you're playing Fossil Dyna, I can see how you might want to play less, because like if you draw it later, you're just not going to be able to summon your Gizmek. That's also why I think, you know, maybe a Border is better, because it gives you more flexibility. It works better with the Gren Module core. Okay, let's talk about Dogmatika. Alright, so Dogmatika, I actually think it's like not a bad idea to play the Dogmatika in this deck, like more Dogmatika, like Dogmatika Ecclesia. It's really good, and of course the super broken search card is like Nadir Servant or something, because these cards are just so powerful. But then again, if you have all these cards, you're probably going to be playing another deck anyway, so that's probably, you know, I think they are worth including. You could cut like Warnings and maybe like I don't know, Ice Dragon's Prison or something like that, or an Eater for these Dogmatika cards, but they're really powerful. So if you have them, I would definitely try them out and include them, because I think they're definitely worth it. Okay, Card of Demise. I've seen Card of Demise played, and I actually think if you know you're going first, Card of Demise is another perfectly valid side deck card. I just think this deck doesn't need much help going first, but like if you know you're going first, you could take out your Gammas, you take out an Eater or something. Like you don't really mind discarding Gizmek, and so I think Demise is certainly like an interesting card, maybe worth playing. Dark Bribe I also think is a card worth testing out, worth playing. Although, like, honestly, sometimes I personally prefer, I just prefer to take the risk. I'm like, you know what, if they have the blowout when I don't have the judgment, they have it, I can't do much about it. Like, I don't want to play like Dark Bribe and have it be a bad card, or like have it not worth something. Wow, actually I just got a subscription in the middle of doing this video. That's kind of cool. I'm gonna leave that there. That's never happened to me before, but thank you, Andres. Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right, so that's the last card I wanted to talk about, Dark Bribe. I should bring it up here on the screen just in case you guys don't know what it is. But yeah, that's Dark Bribe for you. When your opponent activates a Spell Trap card, you can stop and then they draw 1 card. So you're going -1, which is, honestly, that's not even the biggest problem. It's just, like, sometimes they just don't have a Spell Trap card you want to negate, and, like, there's nothing to do. So in summary, I think Fossil Dyna is close to making it, but in this build where I'm trying to play Gamma and trying to play better going second, I think Fossil Dyna is not quite cutting it for me. I think it does have a place in the side deck, but we are running, like, you know, the side deck's only 15 cards, so there could be some editing. Let me know what you guys think about everything, and if you enjoyed this video and, you know, made it all the way to the end, you know, I want to thank you for that. I really do appreciate it. Almost at 500 subscribers. I think I've got a cool custom mat to give away. I want to show you guys that soon. Maybe I'll post it somewhere online for you guys to see. All right, until next time, guys, I hope you guys enjoy killing some people with your Gren Modus, stunning some people out, and I will see you guys next time.